For 1 year of college, I was a math major. I know for those of you who didn't know that, you now officially think I'm a nerd. Well, maybe I am. Maybe I am. That's okay. That's all right. I actually love numbers. I really loved numbers then, even more than I do now. But I love numbers. I love taking things that seem a bit chaotic and making it line up, making it match, making it balance. I just have always kind of loved that. That was fun to me. You know, an old algebra book laying around, let's do algebra problems. That was fun to me. I know, I'm weird. Anyway, I can see the eyes rolling. I'm not even going to look at the camera. But I've always even thought that even in my love of math, I can kind of see how God's calling in my life was coming together. What do I mean by that exactly? Well, in math, you make order out of chaos. And in preaching, while I can't make order out of people's chaos, of course, God does that. God is the one who draws people, and people have to respond. But in preaching, you come in with a word from the Lord. You take a passage and maybe take something that they didn't quite see it that way or another, and you present it in a way that if they will listen to the voice of the Lord, their lives can be free and living in victory. And of course, they can be saved and set free and delivered. And God takes all the chaos of their life and He makes order out of it. I do also like to fold fitted sheets. So there's that order, chaos, turning it into order fitted. Some of you fold fitted sheets like this and shove it in the pant. No, anyway, let me move on because that's not what we came to talk about. In math, if you subtract or divide, typically in that picture of subtracting something or dividing between people, you individually have less. That's why I always loved addition and multiplication, because I was all about, having more. But in God's math, and that's what we're talking about for a minute today, in God's math, whether it's subtraction, division, addition, multiplication, it doesn't matter, because it always works out for our growth and provision. God's math always works out for our growth and provision. In 2 Kings chapter 8, there's a passage that is talking about Elisha and the Shunammite woman. Well, Elisha has previously, in a few chapters where we'd already read earlier in 2 Kings, she's met the Shunammite woman, and she actually prophesies to her that she's going to have a son. And she does, in fact, have a son. That son ends up dying, and Elisha comes back, and God uses him to raise her son from the dead. So Elisha and the Shunammite woman have quite the connection, and she's very grateful to him. Well, now in chapter 8, Elisha tells the Shunammite woman to leave her home and to go wherever she can for 7 years, because there's about to be a famine in the land, and she needs to go somewhere so that she is not struck by this famine. Well, she in fact obeys. And it says in 2 Kings chapter 8, we're going to read verse 3 through 6, part of 6. It says, it came to pass, and now she's already gone away for 7 years, and now she's coming back. It says, it came to pass at the end of 7 years that the woman returned from the land of the Philistines. And she went to make an appeal to the king for her house and her land. Then the king talked with Gehazi, that is Elisha's servant, the servant of the man of God, saying, tell me, please, all the great things Elisha has done. Now it happened as he was telling the king how he had restored the dead to life, that there was the woman whose son he had restored to life, appealing to the king for her house and for her land. As Gehazi said, and Gehazi said, my lord, O king, this is the woman, this is her son whom Elisha restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. Now I want you to get this picture. If you've been lost in some of that story, 7 years have passed. She comes back to go to the king and say, okay, king, I'm back. Can I please have my house and my land back? Because the 7 years of famine have passed. And she is standing there on the day she chose to do that. In the moment she chose to do that, at the same time, the servant of Elisha is standing there telling the king about this woman and about the fact that Elisha had raised her son from the dead. What a coincidence! Not. What an amazing thing that God caused this moment to line up together It reminds me of the passage in Psalm 37 and 23, the steps of a good man are ordered of the Lord, and he delights in his way. She ends up right where she needed to be, right at the exact moment in time. She could have shown up any other day to plead with the king, but she came that day, right when Elisha's servant was there. You know, in this situation, of course, Gehazi could speak up for her better than she could speak for herself. Have you ever been in one of those situations where someone spoke up for you and you just sat there and let them do it, and they represent you better? They're more enthusiastic about your need. They'll present your need. I think about that sometimes when I'm at a event or a church and I've shared the things that, if you give in the offering today, you're going to help with this need. And I share it as passionately as I can. But then every now and then a pastor who knows us and loves us will get up at the end of the service and he will just tell the people, listen, if you don't support this, you're going to miss out. God will bless you. And he just goes and goes and goes. He begins to represent me better than I could represent myself. And I just stand back saying, thank you, Lord. Well, that's called favor. And that's what happened in this moment. The rest of that verse 6 says, after they're standing there, it said, so the king appointed a certain officer for her, saying, restore all that was hers. Now we're going to pause there because that's great. Restore what was hers. That's fair. That's fair. It was hers. She left for the famine. She's now returned. It's rightfully hers. Let her have it. That is fair. But then the verse goes on. And all the proceeds of the field from the day that she left until now. Then the king says, and I don't know, maybe in her absence, they farmed her land and made a profit and they wanted to give her the profit. Maybe they had sold a portion of her land and they wanted to give her the land. Maybe he said, we couldn't farm it. There was a famine. But if you had been here, you'd have made this much money, so we're going to give you. I don't know how they worked out the details. I don't know how they did the math, but I know that God's math was perfect. Either way, it was above and beyond what seemed fair. He could have stopped at fair, but God wasn't finished until it was abundant. Some of you need to grab that statement today. Your situation in the world's eyes and in the doctor's eyes and in all of the things that you have need of could stop at fair. Well, that's fair. That's a fair answer. That's a fair response. That's a fair provision. But God is a God of abundance. Now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask or imagine. That's the God that we serve. Get your heart set on the abundance that he wants to give you. Know that your steps are ordered of the Lord, and he is able to do far more than you could ever ask or imagine in your situation.